Hello, all my dear souls. You are here for the new chronicle, my chronicle in France. And today it's a very amazing person we are welcoming because it is Dr. Alexander, my very special guest star today. Because he is amazing. So you will understand after that. I am honored and delighted to welcome you, Dr. Alexander, here in France in my chronicles. Good morning.
Tricia, thank you so much for inviting me in today. It's great to be here talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I apologize for my English because sometimes I'm looking for my words, but I prefer to speak like that because it's with my feelings. So first of all, I would like to explain today why we are both together here. Because, as I said to your colleague by mail, I lost my mom a few weeks ago. And I am looking for signs from here, something to help me during this hard moment. By chance, a video appears on my YouTube as a sign, and it is your testimony. Then I was encouraged by my intuition to buy your book, where you discussed with Raymond Moody, and it is this book.
Mm-hmm.
So I read it. Then it's a very big support for me. Then after 1 week later, I was on holidays on the sea, and because I need to go away, and on a stand, I found, as another sign, I found a book, and it is that book.
Uh-huh.
So when I saw it, wow! I said, it's not possible. It's another sign, because when I asked my mother, I tell her to send me some signs to help me to know that I want a sign from her. So 2 books, 1 video. So now it was signs, and I follow my intuition, and my intuition is always benevolent. So I trust it, and I said I will send a mail to Dr. Alexander, and you are here today.
Well, good. I'm so glad. I've come to realize there are no accidents in life, and when we have events like these that some people call coincidences, I'm always reminded of the wisdom of Carl Jung, who called them synchronicities. They're
Yes.
evidence of kind of a deeper underlying connection, of kind of our connection with the spiritual world. And the more we open our minds to these synchronicities, the more we realize that the universe is trying to teach us many, many things that go far beyond our kind of materialist mindset. And that's why I'm so glad you followed your intuition, followed your synchronicity, and connected. It's a real gift to be talking with you this morning.
Yes, and you are my gift, and you are my sign too. And it is the proof of the existence of my mother, who sends me some signs too. So it's for that you are here to discuss about that. So I will send all my gratitude to the source.
Yes.
To your sphere of all, to my guides and your guides too, and to you to be here. So I would like that first of all, ask you, Dr. Alexander, how are you doing since you made this experience at 52 years old, I believe?
Well, yes, it's been 15 years since I had my coma, and we've come a very long way. In fact, there are other books that I've written beyond Proof of Heaven. There was the book Map of Heaven, which made it very clear that these events are not just rare, with a Harvard neurosurgeon, but happen to millions of people around the world all the time. And then the most important book from my perspective, and all 3 of these are in French, thanks to Guy Tradoniel. The third book is Living in a Mindful Universe. And that's the one that's co-written with my life partner, Karen Newell. And to me, that is the true proof of heaven. You know, the book Proof of Heaven is really just like a giant question mark. It admits these things can happen, but it's like, how do we explain them? You know, in a scientific fashion. And that's where Living in a Mindful Universe goes light years beyond Proof of Heaven to help people understand that modern science is actually converging very rapidly on a way of understanding this. But it must involve a deep sense of kind of spirituality and connection, that we're spiritual beings in a spiritual universe. If you try and deny that, you kind of strip out everything that is so apparent in the evidence. And that evidence includes not only near-death experiences, but shared death experiences, which are very similar but happen in perfectly healthy people. And then, of course, after-death communications, which is kind of what you're seeking. You'd like a message from your mother showing you that she's still here and that she's contributing to your kind of ongoing understanding of the universe. And after-death communications are a beautiful way that so many of us come to realize this bigger kind of aspect of reality and the interconnectedness of our souls. So congratulations to you for opening up so beautifully to that kind of communication.
Yeah, so I can tell some words about my awakening, because my awakening is only from 4 years ago. 4 years ago. I had a disease. I was sick, and I was on the front of the wall, as we said, and I realized that my life is at the end. I was a manager of a company with some employees, and I was always working hard, working a lot, and forgetting everything. But I was always connecting with my higher dimension, my higher self. Yes.
Higher soul.
My higher soul, because I know there is something else than me and in the universe. I was always looking at the sea, at the sorry, at the sky, in the star. And I know my time is 50-50 now on my clock, 50-50, 15-15. So it's a synchron, a mirror hour. Yes, so I was decided at this moment to have an hypnosis, a quantum hypnosis, because I wanted to know why I was in that situation, because I was sick. I take a lot of medications, and I was not like you see me today. I was with medication. It was horrible. And in front of my mirror, I said, it's not me. It's not me. I can't continue. And with this quantum hypnosis, with the QHHT technique, I made a journey. Me too. I made a journey.
You know what?
I made a journey.
A journey.
A journey between lives.
Very
Yes.
good. But life between life regression, hypnotic
Yes.
regression.
Yes.
Very interesting. And how did that go for you?
And I go to a spaceship. I go to a spaceship, and they show me who I am. And I am a starseed, an extraterrestrial starseed in a human body. And since that day, for me, I was not at all in the ufology or spiritual fields. And since this day, it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very special journey, because I didn't know at all at what I saw. Nothing. And I discovered day after day what I saw. And it changed my life.
Beautiful.
And I healed. It was the most impressionate. I healed myself.
Uh-huh.
with energies and with my awakening, because I let the light enter my body. And it's why I am here with people like you to discuss about spiritual fields with other dimensions, etc. So,
Well, that's beautiful that you had such an awakening from, from a hypnotic regression. I think it's important for people to understand. We think we can remember all of our existence, and yet there is something I call programmed forgetting.
yeah.
So, for example, when you study all the scientific evidence for reincarnation, and there's a tremendous amount out there. If people go to University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies, uvadops.org, you'll find that scientists have been studying past life memories in children suggestive of reincarnation going back at least 6 decades.
Yes.
And for example, the UVA group has more than 2,700 cases they've investigated, of which they say 1,700 are solved. What that means is they've actually identified the person who lived before who the child claims to be. But the reason I bring all this up is because those same investigators will tell you that you must harvest these memories from the children before age 6 or 7, because there are
Exactly.
natural processes that cover them over, so that most of us as teenagers and adults have no memory of past lives and between lives. But you took the effort of doing a hypnotic regression and discovering that you did have very strong evidence of past lives for your soul line. And that's the important thing that people need to realize, is that the past life and between life memories are probably much more common, but this programmed forgetting tends to delete them. And only by quieting the mind and by getting rid of the kind of garish light of day of our conscious awareness in the material world, that is through meditation, centering prayer, hypnotic regression, different ways of silencing all the crazy noise coming at us from existence in a body in the here and now. But once we learn to quiet that, we can get in touch with, those past lifetimes and that kind of higher soul line of existence. And this is all stuff that is fully supported by modern science of consciousness. So many people might think, oh, well, you're either scientific or you're spiritual and accept all the stuff we're talking about. And yet, the deep reality is that modern science of consciousness is well along a pathway of fully supporting the afterlife, the notions of a primordial mind that we all share, reincarnation. Every bit of it is part of human existence from a modern 21st century scientific perspective. And so it behooves all of us to
Yes.
more fully investigate our spiritual nature and the spiritual nature of the universe. When I use the word spiritual, to me, it doesn't have to invoke anything religious. In
Yes.
fact, what you'll find is studies of near-death experiencers reveal that the majority of them come back more spiritual after their experience, but not necessarily more religious, unless they had a strong kind of spiritually supportive religious set of beliefs before. And sadly, in our society, religion does not just give you powerful spiritual beliefs, but the ideologies can tend to lead to a false sense of separation and conflict between religions. Whereas I've come to realize from my journey that, trying to label that force of infinite love at the core of the universe and to say, oh no, we claim that force as God. Well, we claim it as Allah. We claim that force as Vishnu, Jehovah, Yahweh,
Mm.
Great Spirit. I don't care what words you use, but they're all basically referring to the common element in near-death experiences going back thousands of years across all belief systems, that there is a presence, a force at the core of the universe, very benevolent, a loving God force that in many ways is our ally. It's our spiritual home. And this is what we can learn by going within and getting away from some of the fractious ideologies of modern religion and following more of personal experience through prayer and meditation to come to a deeper relationship with that loving force, that God force at the core of the universe. And this is where I think the scientific world is going to help usher the rest of humanity into the next level of understanding. And it really, as we explain in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, has a lot to do with this concept of the one mind, and that we're all in this together. We're sharing the one mind. So as most near-death experiencers will tell you, if you hurt another person, you're hurting yourself. And this is something that becomes very obvious in the life review, life flashing before your eyes, described in near-death experiences going back thousands of years across all cultures. But the interesting thing is in the life review, you find that it's not from a personal perspective. It's from the emotional perspective of those around you who were influenced by your actions and even your thoughts. So the life review is a beautiful example of the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, written into the very fabric of the universe. And that's what I think is so exciting about this emerging science of consciousness, is it leads us very richly towards a scientific understanding of the one mind, how we're all in this together. The brain serves as a filter that gives us an isolated eddy current of consciousness out of that primordial mind. But ultimately, when we die, when we leave the physical body at the time of death, the brain and body behind, we realize that we're essentially sharing consciousness, even though there seems to be a certain, what I call viscosity, that connects our souls between lives. That's why you can do a hypnotic regression and have memories of a prior life and a prior life and a prior life, but they don't seem to run in parallel. So any one of us doing this exploration will find a series of lifetimes that we've been living as the soul line. And that helps us come to a deeper understanding of who we truly are. Not this little ego version of self, the little thoughts running in my head. I love how Michael Singer, in his book, The Untethered Soul, he calls the running stream of thoughts in your head your annoying roommate. But that is not who you are. That is not your consciousness. And by going within and rising above this kind of fiction of the self and the here and now, we start to explore broader connections that we share with others. And this realization of the life review and what it shows us about the oneness of mind is something we can explore directly and gain personal experience through prayer and meditation.
Yes, okay. And that's right. And when you say it's not religious, no, because it depends of what we see, what you see. Because in my case, for example, I didn't see heaven. I didn't see a site like that. I saw another dimension. And I can't invent that, because as you said in your book, I can't invent. I didn't know at all about that before. I didn't know about the race of beings. I didn't know at all. I didn't. It was not my interest. So why at this special moment you have this experience, like you, Dr. Alexander, of this day of 208? You had a disease. You are in the coma during 7 days. You are a scientist. You are surgeon, neurosurgeon. You are in the scientific field. So we took you. Someone, God, took you as a scientist and changed you in a spiritual person, because it's a proof. It's the first proof. Why a scientist?
Well, I think other scientists have been through these kinds of adventures, and that, to me, is one of the most remarkable things about the last 15 years since my coma. It might surprise some people in the lay audience, but most of my support has come from other scientists. And that is especially apparent if you look at our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, which is fully endorsed by Jim Tucker, Bruce Grayson, and Ed Kelly, who were three of the leading investigators at the University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies. And they've all come out publicly endorsing and acclaiming our book, Living in a Mindful Universe. In addition, Bernardo Kastrup, Dean Radin. I mean, there are many other scientists, Dr. Larry Dossey, all who have been very generous in their support of Living in a Mindful Universe because it shows the way the science is headed now. And this is what I think is so exciting to all of us is it really leads in a very scientifically defensible kind of model of reality into a much richer sense of our interconnectedness and how we have a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives and in our very existence. And this is contrary to that very bleak and paltry fiction of scientific materialism or physicalism, the notion that only the physical world exists and that therefore the brain must somehow create consciousness out of physical matter. And yet that is something it's called the hard problem of consciousness, which is actually an impossible problem for materialists to solve. That's why the more people study these this empirical data about consciousness, all these human experiences, the more they realize that that bleak and paltry fiction of materialism is false, and that we need much more to explain the workings of the universe. And the way that really works is just through adapting to understanding idealism. Idealism, the primacy of mind in events that occur in the physical realm, is really where we go with that. And of course, that's where we go in the book, Living in a Mindful Universe, a very strong argument, multidisciplinary argument from neuroscience, the hard problem of consciousness, from the binding problem and philosophy of mind. That's the apparent unity of consciousness within an individual, which is very difficult to explain if you think it's all due to contributions from all these different neuronal networks in the brain. So philosophy of mind itself leads us towards a unification idea of consciousness. And then, of course, you have quantum physics, which for almost a century has been screaming at us that consciousness is fundamental. And that whole scientific endeavor of quantum physics over experiments over the last 5 or 6 decades has finally gotten us to a point where the only realistic answer to the question, given the empirical data, is that mind is primary and that we're working with a connection with a primary mind. That God force that near-death experiencers describe is the actual origin of our conscious awareness. And I think this is very important for people to get because it's right at the heart of the scientific revolution that is taking over our world today, and basically is the result of 5,000 years of human investigation and destiny. But we're finally getting to a point where it can start to make sense. And that's the scientific revolution of consciousness, viewing the brain as a filter, a reducing valve, or a transceiver, but not as the ultimate producer of consciousness. And not only that, we discuss how memories are not stored in the brain. That's probably the last nail in the coffin of materialist neuroscience because it completely defies that the brain has any kind of inherent capability of using memory and consciousness, but must move beyond itself, beyond the material realm, to explain all the findings. And that's what I think is so exciting. And especially given the fact that the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2022 was given to 3 people, an American, John Clauser, the French optical physicist Alain Aspect, and Austrian Anton Zeilinger, for work they've done over the last 5 decades that basically proves spooky action at a distance, entanglement, that connection between subatomic particles across time and space that completely defies our attempts at explanation from, the positions of what's called local realism and materialism, and tells us that there's something very false about all of that. And that's where this mental layer of the universe, a layer of connection across space and time, which we have access to as conscious beings, becomes the answer that the physicists are so adamant to try and find. And that entanglement is showing us that the mental connection of the universe is basically supervenient upon everything else. That is the things that occur in our lives, the emergent physical reality is ultimately due to interactions in that mental realm. And that's why we can demonstrate mind over matter. For example, in placebo effect, that's a beautiful example of mind controlling matter and leading to the outcome we want. Placebo effect, miraculous spontaneous remissions, miraculous healing in NDEs. These are all examples of rich and deep causal connections that can lead to wholeness and healing that are beyond anything we understand as connections within the space-time fabric of the material realm. And that's why meditation, centering prayer can be so important, because they allow us to connect with that primordial mind that is so influential, and then invoke the set of circumstances that we would wish for ourselves and for others. And that's that binding force of love. That's where all of this starts to really make sense.
Yes, yes.
Through personal experience of meditation and centering prayer that any and all of us can come into this kind of knowledge.
Yes. And do you think that you talk about meditation, prayers? Do you think that hypnosis can help to go in that realm?
Oh, I think hypnosis is very helpful. I mean, for example, we also in dream states, all of
Yes,
us
yes.
dream. Animals dream, humans dream. We may not remember our dreams, but the evidence is very strong that we all dream every night.
Yes.
And those dreams are an encounter into the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
And that's why people can often get tremendous information,
Yes.
like a premonitory dream,
Yes.
to go to their doctor or get a mammogram because they have a breast mass or something like that. I mean, Larry Burke, a colleague of ours, wrote a beautiful book on premonitory dreams in breast cancer. I think he had about 40 cases or so.
Okay.
But the dream world is something that's also an avenue into that spiritual realm. I would also point out, for example, that psychedelics, plant medicines, entheogens, and do not call them hallucinogens. That is a completely erroneous term because it implies that everything you witness during the influence of those plant medicines is a hallucination. That is a false premise. We can learn a lot from that. Now, I'm a huge fan of meditation. And even though I'm very grateful that psychedelic substances are now being researched again, because I think they show us a lot about our ability to heal and also show us how the brain is not the creator of consciousness. We discuss all that in Living in a Mindful Universe in great detail, but the scientific evidence fully supports that the brain goes dark under the influence of such medications, plant medicines like psilocybin, DMT, LSD, etc. The brain is not producing those phenomenal, extraordinary experiences. It's actually just getting out of the way. And that's why it's so important that we're now investigating entheogens. Psilocybin, for example, has been shown to have tremendous power in 1 or 2 doses. I'm not talking about using it all the time, but 1 or 2 doses, which I think serves as a catalyst to connect us with our higher soul. But psilocybin has been proven by Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins University to give about an 80% cure rate of some of the worst addictions known to man: nicotine, opiates, alcoholism, etc. Psilocybin has been very effective at alleviating addictions in those cases with 1 or 2 doses. Again, not an ongoing exposure to psilocybin. And also, psilocybin's been very effective at alleviating debilitating fear of death in terminal cancer patients. Again, to the tune of about 80%, with follow-up at 6 to 12 months post-exposure, showing a very long-lasting effect of a single dose of psilocybin to help. And I would argue that, and we're trying to put together the protocols to use meditation to do the same thing, because I believe that the psilocybin in those cases is only serving to thin the veil, to connect you with your higher soul. And that's where all the healing comes from. But we can do the same thing through meditation and centering prayer. There are ways that we can get in contact with that aspect of self that is far above and beyond the ego, but also has tremendous capability of shifting our lives in a very positive direction.
Yeah, okay. So, Dr. Alexander, can we return to your book, to your experience back, in order for my auditors and for readers to know about this experience, because we talk about near-death experience, but can you resume your experience? What happens a day of in 208. What happened? A morning you get up and you were healed, and then after.
Okay, well, 4:30 in the morning, November 10th, 2008, severe back pain. I soon realized I had a horrific headache. Anybody in medicine would know sudden onset of back pain headache, think meningitis. Well, the doctor was already out. My brain was being overrun by an extremely aggressive and should have killed me bacterial meningoencephalitis. And within an hour or two of symptom onset, soon I was having grand mal seizures, was completely comatose, gone from this world. My family was very alarmed, called the EMTs to our house. The ambulance arrived, tried to break the seizures, took me off to Lynchburg General Hospital emergency room. Now, I remember none of that. I remember none of the next 7 days. I was gone from this world. The doctors quickly figured out I might have meningitis, did a lumbar puncture. Out came thick white pus under pressure. And Dr. Laura Potter, my ER physician, told me months later when she saw that pus under pressure, knowing I went into coma within 3 hours of symptom onset, she estimated I had about a 10% chance of survival. By the end of that week, 7 days in coma on a ventilator on 3 powerful intravenous antibiotics without showing signs of neurologic improvement, I was down to a 2% chance of survival, but no chance of recovery. And it was that setting where the doctors held a family conference, advised the family it was time to stop the antibiotics and let me go, let nature take its course. And it was soon thereafter I started coming back to this world. But when I did, my brain was absolutely wrecked, just as my doctors predicted. I didn't even recognize loved ones at the bedside, my mother, my sisters, my sons. And yet I remembered extraordinarily this spiritual journey I had just been on over the last 7 days that seemed to last for months or years, but had to happen within those 7 days of Earth time. And important to point out, one of the atypical features of my near-death experience was amnesia, that I had no memories of Eben Alexander's life, no knowledge of this earth, no knowledge of this universe. It was really an empty slate. And I think that was very crucial for many of the deepest lessons I was to learn. But it took me months to figure every bit of that out after the coma, or to at least come to a deeper understanding of it. And that amnesia, when I first woke up in the week or two after coma, when my neuroscience knowledge is coming back to me, I thought, well, I guess that makes sense that I didn't remember things because my neocortex was horribly damaged. I knew that from what my doctors were already telling me, even though I had not yet taken a deep dive into my own medical records, which I did over the next few weeks and month or so. Going through my scans, neurologic exams, talking over with my doctors. None of it made sense because what I realized is that the evidence of damage to my brain was far too extensive, and it was all neocortex. That's all the part that generates human conscious experience. So in other words, my kind of meningitis is a perfect model for human death. So where did I have this extraordinary experience? Where did that come from? And it turns out there's a medical case report written on my medical records that came out in 2018. It was in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease by Dr. Serbi Khanna, Lauren Moore, and Bruce Grayson. That case report, they spent about 2 years going through my medical records, more than 600 pages and lots of scans and information. And their two conclusions were, one, my brain was far too damaged to host any kind of dream or hallucination, much less the most extraordinary, meaningful, detailed, impactful, and transformative set of events of my whole life. And that was the first giant shock, was how did I have any experience at all? And especially given the veridical time anchors that showed that all my experience happened between days 1 and 4 or 1 and 5. And not just when I was coming out of the experience on day 7. That was their first major conclusion. The second was that my recovery was completely unprecedented in the medical literature, completely unexpected. This is what my doctors had basically told my family. And yet, over 2 months, I ended up having a full recovery with a return of memories that was more complete than the memories I'd had before coma. And, those two facts are fantastically important. And for people who don't have medical education, they can't really get the gist of that medical report. But anyway, getting back to your original question. So the journey that happened, this beautiful journey that I explained in that book, Proof of Heaven, and have shared so many times. Very briefly, I'll say it started in the earth were my view, primitive, coarse, unresponsive, underground, feeling of roots or blood vessels all around me. I never had any body awareness during any part of this experience, but I was rescued from that earth were my view, that primitive starting point, by this slowly spinning white light that came packaged with a perfect musical melody that served as a portal, opened up into the rich, ultra real Gateway Valley. That's an intersection point of earth and the spiritual realms. It's where we go through life reviews. It's where we reunite with souls of departed loved ones and our higher soul, go through planning for next incarnations, all of that. And in that beautiful Gateway Valley, I wasn't alone. There was a beautiful spiritual guide, a young woman, sparkling blue eyes, high forehead, high cheekbones, soft brown hair framing her lovely face. She was dressed in this simple garb, but it was very colorful. I was a speck of awareness on a butterfly wing. There were millions of other butterflies looping and spiraling in vast formations. Below us in this verdant, fertile meadow, thousands of beings dancing. I call them souls between lives. I saw dogs jumping, children playing, all kinds of festivities going on, fueled because up above were these swooping angelic orbs, emanating chants, anthems, hymns that would thunder through my awareness. And there was this soft summer breeze that blew through while I was on that butterfly wing. And that breeze, I called in my later writings, the breath of God, the divine wind. That was my awareness of the infinite healing and loving force of that God force, that I was in my spiritual home. It's most comforting to be there. We know we're home. We have memory of all of that. Has been deleted through these lifetimes, that program forgetting, and yet all those memories are recovered. We recover that sense of being in that spiritual home. And that's why death of the brain and body is actually a liberation of conscious awareness. It doesn't shut down as materialists predict. It actually expands when it's unfettered by the brain and body. And that's what I was discovering in this incredible journey. Now, it turns out those angelic choirs provided portals to higher and higher levels, up to what I call the core, an infinite inky blackness where all dualities are resolved, all paradoxes, and all of eternity is available. So important to understand there's a completely different ordering of time in these higher spiritual dimensions that I call deep time or meta time. And that's what allows us, for example, to have a life review where we have birth, death, everything in between. We witness it all simultaneously. That's because we're outside of Earth time, but in a much deeper and richer flow of time and causality that I call deep time.
Mhm.
And that has a lot to do with how consciousness can evolve and how higher souls can exist, and where the fundamental importance here is of relationship and our loving relationship, so that even though reincarnation is a deep part of this scientific understanding, do know that loved ones would never reincarnate before they are to be there for us when we cross over. That's the important thing to understand about this differential between earth time and meta time or deep time of the spiritual realms, is it allows for focus on the loving relationships, and that you never encounter a paradox where a loved one has already, quote, reincarnated and is not then therefore available to another loved one who is passing over. Very important to understand that focus on love and relationships, because that is what is so apparent to the near-death experience community.
Yes. And do you think it's because you are a scientist that you were chosen to this experience?
Well, I think, near-death experiences happen to millions and millions, if not billions, of us, because they're how we teach and learn and grow. It's how all of consciousness is evolving. So mine is just one of many, 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 many stories. It turns out, though, that given a lot of the interest and kind of friction and conflict in our modern society, it's very helpful that an NDEer would be a neurosurgeon with a deep interest in physics and cosmology, who could go through all this and do it with a model of death that's so complete that most people never recover from it at all, don't even live. And the ones who do live are horribly incapacitated the rest of their life. For that neurosurgeon to then have an inexplicable recovery, yeah, that does carry some lessons. I wouldn't say I was chosen. I would simply say I, like so many other near-death experiencers, are contributing to this fantastic and beautiful story of the reality of our larger selves.
Yeah.
And, to me, I'm just an ordinary guy who, was put up for adoption by my birth mother, when I was 11 days old. That's a huge part of my story. Went through much of my life because of that adoption abandonment wound, doubting at a subconscious level whether I was even worthy of love. And so, in many ways, my near death experience was a final wham, a big lesson in yes, I was worthy of love. And yes, that adoption was for a reason. And in fact, I had to I had to meet my birth family for all the events of the near death experience to happen. So I met my birth family a year before my coma, when I was
Yeah.
54 years old. And so, and then, a year later, went through this incredible experience that absolutely demanded that I know that beautiful birth sister who had died 2 years before I even found out about
Yes,
existence.
I saw that. Yes, it's
Yeah,
incredible because, as you said in your book, you didn't see your father because your father was near from you, of course, because you didn't know your sister.
right.
But during this experience, she came to see you and to to join you, to help you to understand. Uh, and it's very amazing for you because you didn't know her at this moment.
Well, that's the part that's so shocking. I think that's one of the things about the book Proof of Heaven that garnered so much attention. And I will say that, I received thousands of communications from people, emails, and people talking to me after a lecture, what have you, of people who were reminded of their own similar experiences. That's what they were so grateful for, was they would read Proof of Heaven and they remembered something that had happened to them. And it might awaken a past life memory or an early childhood memory, what have you. Um, but that was really the gift, was I was sharing my story, and then thousands of people would share it back with me, their own stories that more fully validated and contributed to my understanding of this grand, huge picture of it
Yes,
all.
yes,
And that's what to me is so exciting. And the
yeah,
scientific world, who takes this stuff seriously, are moving along very rapidly towards a much grander view of humanity and of our potential as human beings to manifest the world of our dreams. And that's what is so important. And so much of the toxicity of our modern world is around the kind of narcissism and egocentrism
mhm,
that has just run rampant. And yet, the deep lesson from modern science of consciousness is we're all truly in this together. And
yeah,
we're bound together through the binding force of love. That is what is so obvious to near-death experiencers. So the more we can take lessons from this body of evidence and start treating ourselves with more love and kindness, unconditional love, kindness, compassion, mercy, when necessary, forgiveness. These are the ingredients to a far more successful and spiritually engaged lifetime, as opposed to that crazy materialist false sense of separation, combined with Darwinian misinterpretations in the mid 20th century of survival of the fittest through competition, as opposed to what most biologists will tell you today, that it's all about cooperation, collaboration between members of species and between species. That's what leads to biological success, not that
mm,
insane focus on competition. Which is what dominated some of the discussions in the mid 20th century, led to some of our economic and social policies that have supported this false sense of separation, this ego, this greed, this wealth concentrated at the top. Every bit of that is contrary to what the lessons of modern NDEs and the science of consciousness are trying to teach us about unity, about love, about taking care of each other. And that is what is going to be the fruit of this tremendous revolution in scientific understanding about the nature of mind and of our oneness and of our interconnectedness. That's why it's so important that this revolution proceed. And that is what I see happening with ongoing increasing support from the scientific community, including, of course, quantum physics, as I said, with that Nobel Prize in 2022. Very powerful endorsement of the spiritual nature, the power of the mental realm, and that we're truly spiritual beings.
Yeah, yeah, and when you are and when you think that you live this experience, you must know now that something exists after death. It's not death, only death. It's only we have only a body, but we are more than a body, because you see something, I see something, a million of people see something. And we can't invent. We have no this imagination. As you say, it's more reality in your journey than you live here.
Right.
It's more real.
It is more real than this world. I mean, that's more than 50. I think it's about 80% of life reviews, according to Bruce Grayson, in a report from the autumn of 2021, pointed out that they were more real than this world. Importantly, another 45% said it was like you're reliving the events, not just remembering. And about 75% said it was like you're experiencing it from other people's perspective, from your victims, if you will. And that's why the life review can be such a powerful course correction. If you've been busy handing out a lot of pain and suffering to others, you end up on the receiving end of that in the life review. And so in so many ways, it nudges us towards love, compassion, kindness, acceptance, and mercy for our fellow beings. And this includes not just humans, because we realize that animals are a rich part of the spiritual existence. And I think as this revolution takes over humanity, it will alter our behavior dramatically, because we'll have to admit kind of the spiritual nature of our interconnectedness. And that's going to have a tremendous impact.
Yes, yes, and when you make this journey, what I received, it's the unconditional love. My feelings are biggest. My feeling, my heart, all my mind are in unconditional love. I receive all big love. I never feel like that. And you say the same thing. That
That's what we can harvest from that spiritual realm. And it's also important to point out that I look at our lives, and to me, the evidence of reincarnation is so crystal clear from a scientific perspective. I just fully accept that it's a reality. But the way I see it from my kind of spiritual experience is it's almost like breathing. And so I would say that our lives here are kind of like the inhale, and then between lives is like the exhale, but they're so interrelated and necessary. But the important thing to remember is that the growth, for the most part, occurs in the material realm. This is where we grow. So the life review helps us to kind of make amends, kind of sort it all out, make sure all the residual lessons are learned and taught, and then we dive into the next incarnation for the next round of learning and teaching and growth and transformation. But that the action happens here. Even though we have program forgetting and we're kind of operating in the blind, there's no way to kind of, routinely run higher soul kind of guidance of this, although many advanced souls have that living in this material realm. They have that foot in both worlds. There are many awakened individuals who contribute to this kind of growth and understanding in humanity. But most of us are kind of going along with that blind ignorance, that program forgetting, thinking we live birth to death. That gives us skin in the game. So it does have an important role in kind of giving us this buy-in to live these lives and learn these lessons as best we can. But ultimately, we are all destined to kind of rise above that kind of ignorance and darkness of our misunderstanding in this material realm, and start gaining more and more of the wisdom of that spiritual realm. And that's what will be the transformation of all of consciousness. I love how Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, in his book, mid-20th century book, Phenomenon of Man, made it clear that evolution was happening, but it was much grander than just some puny little Darwinian evolution on Earth of biological systems, but evolution of all of consciousness throughout the cosmos. And that's what I clearly saw coming back from my near-death experience as the way everything was unfolding. So reading his book was very helpful. That's Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's book, Phenomenon of Man, which I can highly recommend. But
Yes.
it's really all about this evolution that we're going through now and transformation to the next level where Homo sapiens will truly become wise.
And the most important is that when you live this journey, this type of experience, immediately you want to share it. You
Right.
want to share it. You don't want to keep it yours, only yours.
Absolutely not. Well,
Yeah.
I certainly realized with what I had been through, and this was emphasized by the three doctors who wrote that case report in Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease of September 2018, made it very clear that this case was absolutely extraordinary, unprecedented in the medical literature. That's what had shocked me so early on. And of course, people don't understand the medical concepts. They're kind of at a loss. But that's why the scientific and medical communities have been more supportive than just about any other community of me and my experience, because they recognize, oh my gosh, when you read that case report, and it goes far beyond the medical details I presented in the book Proof of Heaven, but it makes it crystal clear. Where did this survival come from? Where did this
Yes.
miraculous recovery come from? It came
Yes.
from the spiritual realm, which is accessible to all of us. That's why it's so important to use prayers, centering prayer and meditation. And I highly recommend Sacred Acoustics for people who are interested in deep meditation. Go to sacredacoustics.com to learn more. I've been using this binaural beat brainwave entrainment every day for more than 10 years to return to my NDE. Karen and I use Sacred Acoustics tones, differential frequency brainwave entrainment in a lot of our workshops online and
Yeah.
workshops that we deliver in person to help people grow. But binaural beats, especially Sacred Acoustics, is a very powerful way to dive deep into the one mind and traverse that veil. So I highly recommend anyone out there who is a true seeker start using Sacred Acoustics for meditation. And I think you will find it to be a very powerful adjunct. And this is all discussed in more detail in Living in a Mindful Universe. I will also point out that the book Proof of Heaven has just been republished in English as a 10th anniversary edition that actually has 36 more pages beyond the original book.
Okay. So good to
And
know.
we're working on getting that translated into different languages. But that 10th anniversary edition is very important because it tells everybody what has happened in the 10 years since Proof of Heaven came out. And there is a lot that has happened.
Yes, and in this book, you said too that we are at the moment of the awakening, global in a global awakening. Do you think that during the pandemic moment, we are beginning to expand our consciousness more than before?
I think absolutely. I think the pandemic has helped in a lot of ways. It kind of forced some hardship on us. It forced some isolation. In many ways, I think people sense that that was more damaging than not. But I think also it revealed to us uh, how a lot of the toxicity of human activity on this planet, like polluted waters and polluted air, pretty rapidly improved when human activities were diminished during the pandemic. So it shows us that if we can take other
Yes.
steps to kind of eliminate the footprint of all this excessive human activity on the planet, that we can start to see recovery. We can start to see that the damage done by Homo sapiens can be fairly readily reversed, at least in some cases. But that is also a deep lesson about how in many ways it is not so readily reversible. And so we need to take a responsibility for this. Now, also, what I think COVID pandemic showed us is to care for others. I mean, they're in
Yes.
all this isolation and all of the kind of horrific nature of that virus and all the suffering that happened. Uh, it was clear that we're kind of fragile. Life is fragile. We need to treat each other very gently and carefully and respectfully as the true divine and sacred beings we are. And I'm also hoping that uh, the action to go to Zoom, to go to a business on the internet, as opposed to everybody commuting in their gas burning vehicles and flying places in jets and what have you. We need to stop doing that so routinely. Burning carbon fuels is killing us and killing millions of species and killing future generations. We need to get off of that carbon addiction now.
Yeah.
And start building sustainable energy everywhere. There should be no fossil fuel industry within the next decade. It should be eliminated. Every step we take should be towards sustainable energy at all costs. And there is no doubt in my mind that the pandemic, a lot of the lessons learned from the pandemic, can contribute to our much more efficiently managing the affairs of humanity without necessarily burning all those carbon-based fuels and killing the future of this planet.
Yes, and I think it is the purpose of the universe to show her that.
I think absolutely. And that to me is a beautiful wake-up lesson from the pandemic.
Yes.
Let's learn to get by with less, not burn so much carbon,
Yes.
Not insist on everybody being present in physical presence, but let's do much more on the internet, do much more Zoom calls, Zoom conferences, what have you, and quit burning all these fossil fuels and get into completely sustainable energy.
Yes, that's right. And so you say that we come whole from the other side in your book, from the other side. That is to say that we are not alone. We are living with our deceased people at the same time in other dimension and other beings in other dimension or planets. I think so.
Absolutely. And they are here to help us. And that's an important thing, is open our minds to guidance, to angels, to help from the other side, because they are there to assist. And I think that's going to be a major factor moving forward, especially as more and more people recognize that the physical world is not the be all and end all of existence, but that we as spiritual beings have connections to far grander powers by going within into this mental layer of the universe. And that's where we can start to manifest a lot more of the healing energy and proper relationships that will foster a much healthier, kinder, gentler, more harmonious and peaceful world.
Yes, harmony, a peaceful world. We hope that whole. And when we are awake, it's our purpose. It's our main object. So to do that. So Dr. Alexander, we will be at the end, at the end of the discussion. So I invite my auditors and readers to go to read this book and others from Dr. Alexander, and to see his site. I will put it under the video when I will prepare it, with your site, with your biography. I didn't say anything about your biography, but it is on your site. In internet.
Right. People go to ebenalexander.com. They can learn a lot more. Sacredacoustics.com for the meditation. And also, I would recommend a series of free interviews we did during the pandemic with a lot of the global leaders in the consciousness awakening movement and science, and other experiencers, etc. And that can be found at inner, INNER, sanctumcenter.com. And that's a pathway into a lot of other resources that we've offered to people. So it's a great way to kind of educate yourself. And Living in a Mindful Universe, of course, is the book that really goes to the next level. That's the one that was co-written with Karen Newell. Yeah.
So to end the discussion, Dr. Alexander, can you answer to the question, if there exists something else after death?
Is there what?
If there exists something else after death?
Oh, yes, of course.
Of course.
And that's the adventure of it all. And that's what we all will come to know. And for anyone who remains doubtful, I would steer you to bigelowinstitute.org. You'll find 29 papers that won a big essay contest back in 2021. They're all scientific papers proving the reality of the afterlife. So bigelowinstitute.org, they're all free right there. Start reading and sharing with your friends. I can especially recommend Jeffrey Mishlov's first place winner. I think it goes a long way towards making the case very elegantly. Also, the scientific power of the papers by Pimben Lommel, who won second place, by Dr. Bernardo Kastrup and Julie Beischel, I think are very kind of scientifically heavy weighted to support the reality of the afterlife.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Alexander. I think we are all connected. We are one with the high consciousness. We are one consciousness.
We are indeed. Thank you so much, Tricia. So good to be on with you.
Thank you. All my gratitude, Dr. Alexander, to be here. Thank you very much.
You.
Bye-bye. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.